But before we begin our Bible study, we're going to allow a few moments of silent time where you can pray and represent yourself before the throne of grace. Time to use the rebound technique if needed, which is simply 1 John 1:9. We confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us of all unrighteousness. So let's bow our heads together for a few moments. Ephesians 3:17 is the answer for the United States of America. And the fact that if we fulfill this prayer of Paul, we will become the salt, the preservative of our own nation. So let's take a look at it. In Ephesians 3:17, Paul's prayer, he says that Christ, that's Jesus Christ Himself, may dwell or may be at home in your right lobes through doctrine. So he's praying that the thinking, the mind of Christ may be installed in your right lobe through the teaching that comes from the Bible. That you, being rooted, means you found a place to send down your roots, rizoo, and grounded, themilio, that means you're stable, in love. And remember, that's the noun and not the verb. In the sphere of love, and that is your unique spiritual life of the church age, the divine dynasphere, also called the love complex. Now, I did not finish my exegesis last time because I got carried away drawing the divine dynasphere, and I need to go back right there. This is the page that we actually stopped on. And I showed you, I need to go to view. I need to go back. We're going to continue looking at the divine dynasphere, but I need to finish my exegesis of our verse here. And so we're going to take a look at rooted and grounded, which we did not cover the last time I was with you. What does it mean to be rooted and grounded in the love complex? So let's take a look at the phrase being rooted. Is a perfect passive participle of the verb rizoo. Rizoo. The perfect tense is an intensive perfect. It means the action of the verb has been completed with results that are going on. What does it mean? The believer has tapped into Bible doctrine to provide the inner resources of the soul. The passive voice, the believer receives the action of the verb through the daily intake of Bible doctrine. The temporal participle, and it should be translated having been rooted. So once again, the Bible plays into the hand of the country boy and a agrarian lifestyle, agricultural lifestyle. My dad spent 20 years of his life serving the farming community here at a business called Southern Farmers Association. I spent 5 years of my life working there from age 13. And so I became accustomed to the agricultural arena of Clark County, which is wide and varied. And we serve the row crop community, which is in the heyday, we covered a big section of Clark County, raising soybeans, corn, rice, cotton, milo, and other grain crops. And so we sold seed, fertilizer, chemicals to serve the row crop community. And obviously, when the farmers walked into our store, many times it was like for them their one trip to town a week, where the only other person they saw were the people at the farm store. It was much like people going in for sugar and flour in the old days. And so when they walked into the farm store, there I was as a 13-year-old man. And I got to listen to the farmers talk. And a lot of times it was complaining. And they stand around and they would complain to one another. And usually it was about the weather. And so it was either not enough rain or too much rain. And what I learned as a young man is that these row croppers, they would put their seed in the ground and they were looking for the perfect amount of rainfall to complement the germination of their seeds. And many times there would be not enough rain and the seed would lay in dusty soil, and the crows and other vermin would come through and harvest the seed before they could receive a rain and get germinated. Or maybe they just got enough rain just to get the seed germinated, and then it dried right back up. And then the seed was laying in dusty soil with its little taproot, and it quickly was extinguished by the heat. But on the other hand, they may receive a rain, and they may get a seed germinated, and it begins to send down its root, and then they receive some more rain, and then they receive some more rain. And what happens to a plant that receives too much rain? It can become flooded and it can die. They plant the soybean or corn can't live underwater. Or if it's not underwater, what can happen is that the root, it indicates that I don't have to go very deep to receive water. And therefore, I'm just going to send my root down 3 or 4 inches because I've got plenty of water around in the top 3 or 4 inches of soil. Well, that's all good and fine until you learn about July and August in Arkansas, because it can go from well-watered and well-rained to nothing in an instant. And the heat of Arkansas can dry things out quick. And so here you have a plant that has received enough rain that it didn't kill it, but it didn't send down its roots deep. And when July and August hits, now it's drought, and it has no resources. It has no root system that goes way down deep to get down to the water table and receive nourishment. And so we see the Christian life here is related to that plant. The believer who sinks his roots into religion is a very shallow resource. And when the harshities of life, the adversities come, he shrivels and he shrinks and he does not bear fruit. And if you've ever ran a combine in the fall, the worst thing in the world is trying to combine soybeans, and the plant is only about this tall and its fruit is hanging right down next to the dirt. You got to run that $50,000 header right down low, close to the ground, and you're scooping up dirt, and it makes your blades dull and everything else. Oh, it's terrible. And you've got acres and acres and acres of these soybeans that you're trying to get into the hopper, and it's just so hard. But when you've got a good crop of soybeans, those things get waist deep, even right up in here. And they have all the fruit hanging up nice and high. And you can run that header 6, 8, 12 inches off the ground, and you can get all of your soybeans, and it's a beautiful thing. So here what we're seeing is the life of the believer. And there's so much shallowness in Christianity now that we're not bearing a lot of divine good. And the divine good that is there is very infrequent. Most of it's human good, and most of it's related to religion and do-goodism. And so we see to be rooted means to send the roots down to the resources of Bible doctrine, so that when the harshities and the adversities of life and the circumstances that come with the historical trends of life, that you're prepared. You know what that means? Bring the sun, bring the drought, bring the dry weather. I don't care. I have sent my roots down into Bible doctrine, therefore I don't. You see, it doesn't matter what happens out here. The adversities of life, they do nothing, but they complement where my root system is. And so we see that Paul uses the word, and it has great meaning even in our day. The next word, and grounded, is the phrase in the English. It's the perfect passive participle of the verb themileo. Themileo. That's Themelioo. Themileo. The imperfect tense is the intensive perfect, indicating that the action of the verb is completed and the results are going on. The passive voice, the believer receives the action. That means he is completely stable and insulated from the ever-changing trends in human history through the daily function of gap inside the divine dynasphere. So themileo means stability. It's funny if you try to raise a tree, if you want to grow plants, what you find out is if you raise a tree inside a greenhouse or where it's protected from the elements, it's not stable. But if you put a tree out in the open where it can receive wind, its root system becomes invigorated, and it has to sink its roots down deeper, and it becomes stable, and it can blow with the wind, and the harder the wind blows, the deeper the roots go. And so a lot of people have figured out real quick that if you don't influence your plants, if you don't allow the elements to hit your plants, they're weak and they have no stability. And so the believer receives stability from his spiritual life. His spiritual life. And he becomes insulated from the roller coaster of historical trends. Uptrends and downtrends in history. And therefore, what the believer sees on the news doesn't bother him. Who is sitting in the Oval Office does not bother him. What his friends believe does not bother him. He is not on the roller coaster as the rest of the world is. He is stabilized because his spiritual life is his priority. Everything else comes in second place. His relationship and his fellowship with God is his priority. Bible doctrine is his priority. And therefore, what's happening in the world becomes laughable. It becomes laughable. People are so susceptible to what they see in the media. And the media is nothing more than Satan's classroom. for the indoctrination of cosmic believers. Look, he owns the media. It's leftist to the core. And we've seen our own media in the United States of America hijack our own election. They have hijacked our own election. They could be saying we don't know who the winner is. It looks like there's a discrepancy. But instead, we have seen them lean towards their type of government, which is leftism. And we're fed it every time we pick up our phones. We're getting fed the lie. You couldn't put any truth out there. It'll be thrown a blanket over. So if you were relying on what you're seeing from the media and from the world, you'd be highly depressed. You'd be in a bucket of tears, if you will. I had to make up my mind a long time ago that my happiness would not be dependent on who won an election. I had to. I was forced to this conclusion. Because if I had not made that decision, I would have been totally miserable in my own life. And therefore, the believer who makes his own spiritual life his priority is insulated from these things. His happiness is not dependent on politics. His happiness is not dependent on leadership. His happiness is not dependent on what he sees in society. He is grounded. He is stable. And so we see that Paul's prayer for us is a direct application to our day and time. And let's not forget the last phrase, in love. It is the phrase en plus agape, and it's the locative of the noun. That means in the sphere of love. And that is the divine dynasphere. Your own spiritual life, the unique spiritual life of the church age. Now, last week I began to outline and develop the divine dynasphere, and I kind of got rushed because I was running out of time. And what we began to see was the believer in the church age has been given a unique spiritual life. Even though at the moment he was born again, God the Holy Spirit took him out of Adam and placed him into Christ. That's the top circle. And this is your relationship with God. You're now a child of God, and you can never lose your salvation. Also, at the very moment, He gave you a gift. And it was called fellowship, or the unique spiritual life of the church age. I like gifts. There's all kinds of gifts in the Bible. We're about to celebrate Christmas. And the Bible says that Jesus Christ was a gift to all mankind. And through Christ, salvation came. And so as a gift, it will be a gift that is celebrated for all of eternity. You can imagine receiving a gift this Christmas. Well, in eternity, you will carry around the present box, if you will, as if you were a child, filled with glee about a new gift. And the joy from this gift, the gift of Christ, will last for all of eternity. And we've got children thinking about presents under the tree right now. They're shaking boxes, wondering what it is, and they're full of joy and glee about Christmas time. Well, every believer for all of eternity will be full of joy about the gift of salvation that comes through Jesus Christ. There's all kinds of gifts in the Bible. When you see Jesus Christ winning His third royal patent as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, when He won the victory of the cross, the strategic victory of the cross and the resurrection and the ascension, when Jesus Christ won, God the Father complemented His gift with the church, the bride. And so for one right man, that is Christ, God the Father complemented Jesus Christ with one right woman, that is the church, the bride. You are a gift, and you commemorate the victory of the hypostatic union, Jesus Christ's first advent. So we are here as the bride of Christ, about to be resurrected, and we're a gift from God the Father to God the Son. Jesus Christ gave the church a gift. On His ascension, He left power. And the very first gift that Jesus Christ gave to His bride, guess what it is? The divine dynasphere. He gave the church a gift, your unique spiritual life. And the divine dynasphere is complemented by Bible doctrine, His thinking, which He also left behind in writing. So there's all kinds of gifts in the Bible. God gave Adam and Eve a gift in the garden. Remember when Jesus Christ walked Eve down the aisle? He presented her. He presented her, it says. And Adam did a backflip in his own soul, it says. It says that when he finally viewed the woman, see, he had named the entire animal, every species of animal. This guy was a genius. He went through and named all of the different animals. And it says he did not find one helpmeet. He might have found some good companions, maybe a dog or a horse. It couldn't have been a cat. But he never found a helpmeet. He never found anybody who was suitable for a wife. And then it says that Jesus Christ was the first anesthesiologist of history, and He put Adam into a deep sleep. And He removed a rib. And He built from the rib Eve. And when He had built Eve, He walked her down the aisle. He presented her to Adam. And Adam exclaimed, finally, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, a helpmeet for me. When he saw her, he knew in an instant, that was mine. I am man, this is woman. And so it was the first history, it was the first wedding of history. And Jesus Christ, He had to have a smirk on His face as He saw Adam become enlightened when he finally found the right one. But there was a gift, and the gift, the first wedding present to Adam and Eve, and by the way, they were naked, but they were clothed in a veil of light. That was their clothing. The very first gift was sex. And it wasn't for making babies. It was for enjoyment. And so the very first wedding gift to Adam and Eve was sex, and babies didn't come along for a long time after. There's lots of gifts in the Bible that come from God, and they're all perfect in their own way. And so we see that the divine dynasphere is God's gift to the church to complement the bride's marriage to Christ. Your own palace, your own sphere of residence, your own fortress, your own dwelling place, your own rock of salvation. And so the bottom circle is more than just a dry drawing, if you will. It is, in fact, the essence of your future and your personal sense of destiny resides in the spiritual realm, your fellowship with God in time. And so as we look at what we see here, the bottom circle is an absolute. You're either spiritual inside the divine dynasphere or you're carnal. When you have unconfessed sin in life. And the carnality is the carnal blob out here. It develops into Satan's system, cosmic 1, the hatred complex of sins, or cosmic 2, the arrogance complex of sins. Now the believer, the issue is that he'll confess his sins to God the Father in Jesus' name and receive forgiveness and cleansing. And that's gate 1. That's the entrance into the palace. We call it the filling of the Spirit. The issue is, are you clean from your priesthood or are you defiled? And if you have unconfessed sin in your life, you're defiled. And you say, well, what if I can't remember all my sins? That's the beauty of 1 John 1:9. He forgives the ones you can remember to confess and even the unknown. The issue is that you revisit the cross where your sins were judged. Homologeo is the word for confess. It means to name, cite, or identify, but it means to do so as in a courtroom scene. Where is the courtroom where sins were judged? The hill of Golgotha. And so we receive forgiveness and cleansing, but we remember that it came at a price. The spiritual death of our Savior. And so 1 John 1:9 is no free ticket, and we understand that someone always has to pay. We're restored to fellowship by the blood of the Lamb. That's the substitutionary spiritual death of Christ on the cross. And without revisiting the cross, we have no fellowship, we have no cleansing. And so gate 1 is the believer priest who is functioning clean from his or her own priesthood. Now he can enter into priestly service, and that is gate 1, the filling of the Spirit. This is where we receive power to execute the Christian way of life. Gate 2, by the way, the first 4 gates function as a whole, and if we're hitting on all cylinders, we can produce the Christian way of life. And so gates 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the spark plugs that have to be firing in order to produce virtue, honor, integrity. Gate 2 is where we learn the basic Christian methods of operation, including the 3 spiritual skills and the 10 problem-solving devices. And so what we've got here is answers for life, answers for living. we can deal with the pressures and the adversities of living in the devil's world from gate 2. Gate 3 is genuine humility, where we salute God every day when we get out of bed. And if we fail to salute and we're functioning in arrogance, God can bring enforced humility, and that's the way of divine discipline. So gate 3 is the humility gate. Gate 4 is gap, where we learn doctrine. And so the believer who is functioning in the first 4 gates develops momentum in the Christian life. I think about it as an engine, because I'm an engine guy. And if you pull the spark plug wires off of your engine, you're going to run rough. And you're going to have misfires. And although the engine will run on 1 cylinder, if it's a 4-cylinder, you can pull 3 spark plug wires off and it'll still run. But it's going to run really rough and really poorly. It will produce some power. I've got a forklift at work it's a 4-cylinder engine. It runs on 1 most of the time, and every once in a while on a good day it'll run on 2 cylinders. And it's never run on all 4. And I get to use that thing all the time. Me and one other guy is the only one that can operate it, because we know just how to use the right amount of choke and throttle and everything else just to get this thing to move. It's ancient. It will run on 1 cylinder. And there's a lot of Christians that run on 1 cylinder, the first cylinder. And it's intermittent and periodic at best. But the believer who begins to put all of his spark plug wires on, begins to learn gate 2, the 10 problem-solving devices, and now he's got some real answers for life, see? He begins to salute God in all of His ways. Acknowledge Him, if you will, in gate 3. He begins in gate 4. He finds his right pastor. And he comes into the classroom and he's ready. He's organized in his mind. He's ready to concentrate. He understands the issue of rebound. And he begins to learn doctrine, one piece of the puzzle at a time. Now, this believer is now going to make some power in life. And what this means is that the believer is going to produce integrity first. See, over here, he learns what will produce the Christian way of life. And it's not until he gets to firing on all 4 cylinders that he can come around here and have personal love for God and impersonal love for the entire human race. You can't say, oh, I love God and hate your brother, the Bible says. See, that's fake. What you can do is learn how to function as a Christian and to begin to develop integrity. And now you can come around here and you can have the true and full use of motivation for producing the Christian way of life. And gate 5 is the motivational factor. I love God because of all He has done for me. And therefore, I want to serve Him in my life. I'm overwhelmed by the grace, the seeds that He has sown in eternity past that I am reaping now. And therefore, it is my motivation to serve Him. Gate 6 is agape love, and this is the verb. This is impersonal love for all mankind. This is the relaxed mental attitude of agape love, free from mental attitude sins. It is virtue love. I love you not because of who you are, because of who I am. It is freedom. Freedom for another's volition. Gate 7 is momentum testing, and this is where the believer will walk across the desert as Caleb and Joshua did before they got to the promised land. Gate 8 is the winner's gate, where your cup overrunneth, and you can take the witness stand for the prosecution and the appeal phase of Satan's trial. God can point to you and say, have you noticed my servant, full of integrity? So there is the fortress, the system that we call the divine dynasphere. It's the unique spiritual life of the church age believer. In our passage, it is en plus agape, the noun, the sphere of love. And so also it's called the love complex. Now we're going to begin to study the divine dynasphere and some of its inner workings. And we're going to find out that the salvation of our nation is not dependent on overt activities, but it is dependent on believers who embrace the unique spiritual life of the church age, and they execute the protocol plan of God for the church age believer, which is residence, function, momentum inside the operational type divine dynasphere, your unique spiritual life. We'll take a break right here. Even to the dividing asunder of the soul and the spirit, the joints and the marrow, and is a critic of the thoughts and intents of the heart. All Scripture is God-breathed and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, man of God might be matured, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. Study to show thyself an approved workman unto God, who needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. We are studying the word of truth in one phrase, en plus agape, the noun. What is it? In fact, it is the unique spiritual life of the church age. The bottom circle can be developed into the divine dynasphere, the believer's circle of fellowship. We should recognize, firstly, that it's an absolute. You are either residing in the divine dynasphere or you're residing in carnality. There is no in between. The spiritual absolutes are found in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and chapter 3. When we began to study the divine dynasphere, we're taking a look at the unique spiritual life of the church age. Now, it's unique in that from circa 30 AD until the rapture of the church is universal in nature. It exists around the world. Each born-again believer make up the body of Christ. And therefore, we can't go to the temple in Jerusalem to worship. By the way, it no longer exists. There's a mosque there. It's rude and vulgar. A demon worship temple set up on the Dome of Rock where God's temple should go in Jerusalem. And it's a reminder to the Jew that they are in fact under discipline. They have no temple. See, you cannot fulfill Judaism without a temple. Hello. You cannot fulfill the Mosaic law without a temple. And that was the spiritual way of life for Israel. Temple worship. And so obviously, you cannot fulfill Judaism, which is the spiritual life of the Jew in his own age, You can't fulfill it right now. And therefore, since God has set Israel aside for a moment, He developed a unique spiritual life that can be executed, fulfilled, in any area of the world, independent of any building. It is a spiritual life, therefore it's not material, it's not a building. It is not Judaism. It is the spiritual life of Christianity. And so, therefore, it is unique to our own dispensation. Now, I have taught you all of these things so that you understand dispensationalism and you understand how to separate Israel and the church. And you understand that Jesus Christ lived in hypostatic union and that He flew the prototype. And that He has handed down to us the unique way of life, the same system that produced impeccability He gave to us. So we have the phrase in our verse, we are rooted. That means we have sent down our roots into Bible doctrine. We have resources for living. And grounded. That means we are insulated from the roller coaster of life. Through our own unique life, spiritual life. In love is En plus agape, that's the noun, in the sphere of the love complex. Now, isn't that beautiful? The tragedy is that if someone is just now learning this, they may not be able to finish in time to have stability. I've been in ministry, I think, about 8 years now. I spent 2 years teaching this system. 2 whole years teaching this system. 2 years of my life. That's how long it takes to go through this. And I believe, personally, if a Christian got interested in Bible doctrine, they could, in 2 years, reach maturity. But see, you have so many soul glitches nowadays. And you have so many roadblocks to maturity. And it's so difficult for believers to break through all the barriers and to begin just to concentrate on Bible doctrine and forget about everything else. See, you get into all kinds of problems as believers nowadays. And therefore the question is, how many believers actually have tools for living in today's time? There's so many stories in the Bible of believers who overcame. I love it because, you know, in Isaiah's day, there were 185,000 Assyrian troops that marched outside the walls of Jerusalem. And there was Isaiah. And he had been having Bible class for a number of years. And it looked as if that Israel would fall. She was outnumbered by far. All of these well-maintained, well-established troops, they had all the equipment, the beans and the bullets that they needed to overcome Israel. And they had their nice tents, and they just pitched their tents directly outside the walls of Jerusalem, and they were nice and orderly and prepared, and there they were to capture Israel and all of her wealth. But Isaiah had been having Bible class. See, they didn't count that in. They'd already conquered all the other countries in that area. Why would Israel not fall? And the Assyrians came to capture and plunder Israel. But Isaiah had been having Bible class. And Isaiah's Bible class was not the majority. It was a minority of believers. A few, if you will. But Isaiah had cranked out enough Bible doctrine that they had formed a pivot, the salt, the light of their own country. And therefore, as the Assyrians were camped outside the walls of Jerusalem, Jesus Christ defended Israel, and he slew 185,000 Assyrian troops in one fell swoop. He left a few alive for them to return home and tell what had happened when they tried to attack Israel. You see, God can come into defense to any nation. And we may face overwhelming odds. The question is, are we like Isaiah's Bible class? Have we sat down and listened and learned and executed the unique spiritual life where God can act on our behalf? Will He deliver us? That is the question. Have we advanced to the high ground of spiritual maturity? Have we formed a pivot? And so when we're studying the divine dynasphere, we're studying life. There's another story, it's called the story of Jeremiah. And Jeremiah was the weeping prophet. And he had warnings for his brethren, the Israelis. The problem is that nobody attended Jeremiah's Bible class as they did Isaiah's. And Jeremiah's warnings went in one ear and out the other. So Jeremiah saw his country fall, and he was delivered. He was saved by being in a well. I don't know if you've ever been down in a well, but it's not a very kind place to be. And when he was pulled out of the well, he saw the destruction, and he saw his brethren laying in the streets. And he recorded that in the Lamentations. So you have two stories in old Israel. And the question is, which one do we fit in? Are we Isaiah's day, where we produced a pivot and God acts on our behalf and produces a national miracle and preserves the nation? Or are we Jeremiah's day, where the country goes out but the believer is delivered, though as through mud at the bottom of a well? What is the application for our day and time? Well, one thing rings true. At the end of it all, we still have our spiritual life, and that is spiritual freedom, and no man can take it away. Though we may lose our physical freedom, our ability to live our own spiritual life cannot be taken away, and therefore we walk in freedom because we seek His precepts, Bible doctrine. So let's look at point A. The definition is the divine dynasphere is God's plan for the royal family of God of the church age believer. It is God's game plan for the church age, the boundary for the Christian way of life. The divine dynasphere is the power of the Christian way of life. It is God's will and plan for your life. It is the spiritual life of the believer. Therefore, it is independent of whatever may befall us in the trends of human history. Very good subject to study at this day and time. And by the way, we may not always be able to meet here. If there are hooligans burning down everything, we won't be able to sit in here and have a nice, calm Bible class. I hope you know that. See, God's grace sometimes is suspended by way of the local church, and you may not be able to continue in Bible class. So it's a wonderful subject to learn at this point in time. We should see there's some terminology associated. How did they come up with the term dynasphere? It's a good description, by the way. If you don't like that word, just use the love complex. It is described that way. En plus agape, the sphere of love, the bottom circle. Where did the word dynasphere come from, though? Two terms. The Greek word dynamis, meaning power. I like it because it's the same word we get dynamite from. Explosive power. I like it because nitroglycerin is where we get dynamite from. And they run it in race cars. Liquid dynamite. If you've ever seen a top fuel dragster run, they run on nitromethane. It actually measures on the Richter scale when two of them go down the track side by side. One of the first dates I ever took my wife on was to Ennis, Texas, and we went and watched the top fuelers run down the track. It was a memorable event. They broke the mile per hour record. One dragster ran 337 miles per hour in the quarter while we were there, and they since had to shorten the course because the tires were coming apart and they couldn't figure out how to make a tire hold together at 340 miles per hour. And so they shortened the course after that pretty quickly. Also, my wife passed out in the grandstand area while we were waiting for food, and that also made it memorable. So I learned early on to keep snacks or keep something in her. Don't let her get famished while you're out on a date. Power, dunamis. Yeah. I had to make sure she could put up with racing, though, if she was going to marry me, and therefore I had to take her to the drag strip a lot. Make sure she was in for it. So anyway, dunamis power, explosive power. And the question is, can you produce any power in your life? Well, human power is weak and it's vulnerable. Therefore, we need God's power, which is absolute and explosive. Dunamis, meaning power. And also the Greek, the second part of the word is the Greek sphaia, which means sphere. So we have the sphere, the power sphere, the area or boundary for the Christian mode of operation, the mode of thinking. Modus vivendi and modus operandi. They're clearly defined in the New Testament, but with different terms, so we use one word. We're going to look at some different terms, by the way. The divine dynasphere is an interlocking system having gates. We looked at the outline earlier. Gates 1 through 8. If you need to think of it in different ways, do so. I think of it as an engine. having 4 cylinders on the internal side, producing the power, or the final 4 gates of the system, which are functional virtue. That's where you hook onto the output of the engine and you actually produce something. Point 3, under terminology, we should see that Satan's rulership of this world, as is administered through his own power systems, cosmic 1 or cosmic 2, while divine influence of the believer is administered through God's power system, the divine dynasphere. So Satan has his spheres of power, cosmic 1, the hatred complex, or cosmic 2, the arrogance complex, intertwining of his 2 gates is what you see a lot of believers involved in out here. And by the way, Satan can raise up who he wishes and throw away when he has used them up and raise up someone new. And he does it quite often. We have mandates for the believer to reside in the divine dynasphere. First, we'll see a phrase in Ephesians 5:18, be filled by means of the Spirit. It refers to gate 1, or the initial entrance into the divine dynasphere at the moment of salvation. It's the only revocable absolute. When we sin, we exit the system. In Galatians 5:16, we are ordered to walk by means of the Spirit. And I like that word. Peripateo means forward progress. And the Christian way of life is all about forward progress. It's leaving behind the things of the past and making progress. And God believes in progress, and He doesn't believe in dwelling on your past. Whatever failures that you have experienced, they do not make you. We're more than overcomers in Christ Jesus. And we may fail from time to time, and we may fail so terribly that we surprise ourselves how terribly we fail. And the beauty of the system is that God does not dwell on our past or our failures. He looks at what we can be, our potential. And we have the potential to be winners, every one of us. And that is what God is focusing on. The question is, what do you think of Bible doctrine every day? Walk, forward progress by means of the Spirit. That means stay in fellowship. We have some negative commands. In Ephesians 4:30 we see, grieve not the Spirit. We saw that this is an anthropopathism. It means don't make him sad, and obviously God can't be sad. Loosely, it's a mandate for the believer not to enter cosmic 1, or the hatred complex of sins. It's Satan's attitude in eternity past. Another negative command is quench not the Spirit. Quench means to throw fire on something, or to put a red hot piece of metal in a water bucket. And so we're red hot inside the divine dynasphere when we produce momentum. for the inculcation of Bible doctrine. We quench the Spirit when we remove ourselves from fellowship and enter a sinful life. We put out the fire. 1 Thessalonians 5:19, quench not the Spirit. It's a mandate for the believer not to enter cosmic 2, the arrogance complex of sins. We need to recognize when the believer is in the cosmic system, Satan's classroom, the Holy Spirit still indwells the believer. That's the reason he is either grieved or quenched, that we're there. The believer's body is still the temple of the Spirit. Therefore, demon possession is impossible, but demon influence still goes on. So you may have a Christian who is totally saved and he will be saved forever and he's headed to heaven whether he wants to go there or not. But he is totally cosmic. He has Satan's viewpoint inside his right lobe. And we see a lot of cosmic believers nowadays. Liberal theology and liberal politics, liberal policies, if you will, in government. Two areas of believers now. See, liberal theology has created a lot of loser believers who believe the government is capable of compassion. The problem is when you give any government enough power to become compassionate, that government now has the power to take everything you have. And by the way, no government can produce compassion. Because you can't legislate the sin nature out of existence. And that's a big problem. And therefore, the Bible tells us that we should pray for a very constricted government that we never see, that we might be able to execute the Christian way of life. And right now, we have big government telling us we can't meet. We have disobeyed government, by the way, by meeting here. And I'm not ashamed of the fact that the Bible tells us that we should be able to recognize unjust authority. And we have no responsibility to follow unjust laws. If the church cannot meet, and I cannot teach the Bible, I cannot tell you not to vote for an antichrist. How will the population be warned not to vote for an antichrist if we can't have church? It can't. And an antichrist can be elected. Can you see that? And that is why the Second Amendment to our Constitution, the First and the Second Amendment, are so important. You see, the Second supports the First. The First is free speech. In other words, the church has to be able to meet under any circumstances, including warfare, including threats of a virus, including any adversity that we may have going on. How in the world can you be educated on what's going on if you can't have church? And therefore, any laws concerning our meeting together will in fact be unjust laws, and we will continue to break them. And if they try to throw me in jail, you'll know why. We've just come that far down in human history that the Word of God cannot be taught. I've run out of time this morning. I want to issue a challenge as we head into December that we celebrate Christ every day of the month of December. And that means commemorating His person and His work, His entrance into the world, and His work upon the cross. So December is a special month where we celebrate Christmas in the world. I want you to celebrate the true meaning of Christmas, the gift of God, Jesus Christ.